Okay. I'd like to call to order the May 20th, 2026 regular meeting of the South Burlington School Board. The first item on the agenda is a proposed executive session. In this executive session, we expect to cover employment of a public officer or employee. That is the only topic that we're going to be talking about. I would entertain a motion to find that premature knowledge of what we're going to discuss in executive session would put the school district at a disadvantage. Alyssa moves.
A second.
Emily seconds. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. The motion passes. I would entertain a motion to enter into executive session.
I move.
Emily moves.
I'll second.
Alyssa seconds. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, we're in executive session. We will return around 6 o'clock.
I would love if Daisy could join us
Yeah.
for executive session, even Moment and Ollie if they are interested, because we're gonna be talking about something they're familiar with.
Great. Yep. Good. Okay. I'd like to call back to order the May 20th, 2026 regular meeting of the South Burlington School Board. We just had an executive session and we talked about employment of a public officer or employee, and we also talked about labor negotiations. We were joined by Daisy Brayton, District HR Director, Joe Clark, Superintendent, and Ali Leduc and Momin Wakwar, student representatives. So we just finished that. The first item on the agenda is the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The next item on the agenda is announcements. Jen, were you gonna say anything?
Actually, I think it's coming up during the student.
Great, okay.
Reports. Mhm.
Any announcements? Okay. Then the next item on the agenda is to review and accept the agenda. So tonight is a long meeting. We have comments from the public. Focus on student learning, student representative report, then at 6:30, more or less, we'll have the community forum. At 7:30, we'll have discussion item update on the school board website. At 8 o'clock, we've got a moderate action item, it's monitoring report on 1.0 ends, 1.1 disposition for learning, 1.3 personal development. We've got to review the continuous improvement plans for all schools in the district. Monitor report 2.5 financial planning and budgeting. Then we have the superintendent report on viewpoint discrimination, student expression, staff responsibilities, and legal neutrality in public schools. And then we have the consent agenda. So my suggestion on this is that if we find that we have time before the community forum starts, before 6:30, we move up things like the discussion item on the school board website. And if we have a lot of time, we could even maybe move up 2.5 financial planning budget. Just in case, you know, we've got 25 minutes right now, so we'll see how long public comment and student representative will take. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Are there any other amendments to the agenda? It's not amended yet. Sorry. Okay, great. So the first item, the next item on the agenda is comments from the public. So there are 3 opportunities for the public to comment at this time about any topic. Also, before the board takes action on an action item, but only on the topic being actioned. And also, if this is especially warrant community forum and only on the topic warrant on the agenda. This is a community forum. The board will not respond to public comments unless this meeting is especially designated community forum and the comment is on a topic warrant on the agenda. So in other words, we won't respond to public comment until 6:30 and we will only talk about NANS policy. We'll only respond about that. You'll be given up to 3 minutes. Please don't violate anyone's privacy. Official complaints and grievances cannot be filed during public comment. Is there any public comment? Please.
Looks like it's on, it's not. Okay. My name is Mark Gable, I'm a community member. I have a daughter who's a rising senior, South Burlington High School. Last Friday, the other paper printed a letter to the editor regarding the elimination of Honors American Studies from South Burlington High School's curriculum. Having had 2 children that benefited greatly from that class and having worked last year as an advocate to keep the class, I knew it would be an important piece to take the time to read. I don't know how many of you saw it or took the time to read it, but in case you missed it, I brought each of you a copy. The author of that letter has 3 children currently enrolled in South Burlington schools and has served as a substitute teacher in good standing for the past 2 years. Monday, she was called into HR and fired without notice for making my understanding, making a child feel uncomfortable. I'm not making any specific allegations against any individuals, but the timing feels suspect. And the reasoning behind the decision, questionable. Finally, as a parent, as a South Burlington High School student, a community member, and an employee of the district, and a vocal advocate for our schools and our students, this makes me apprehensive to show up and speak out at school board meetings or in public formats. That's a dangerous precedent, given the board's current outreach to community members to get involved with their schools. I hope all of you can appreciate that concern. Thank you.
Is there any other public comment in the room? Okay, the next item on the agenda.
Can I interrupt for one
Yeah.
moment? I'm sorry. As you were going over the agenda, the mystery of why the wellness plan isn't on here, is because I think it might have accidentally been deleted because the continuous improvement plan update, we were wanting to push until the next meeting. And the wellness we wanted, so I know we're not gonna do wellness, but the CIP plan discussion will be at the June meeting as well.
Okay,
So I apologize.
so is the board
That makes sense.
amenable to not talking about CIP today?
Yes.
Okay, so we have done.
Thank you.
The next item on the agenda is the student representative report.
Thanks, James. So there'll be no school on May 25th for Memorial Day, so all students, a really long weekend. Prom is coming up on May 30th from 7 to 10 PM at Old Lantern. So students, make sure to get your tickets ahead of time. On May 28th from 7 to 8 PM, the high school will be hosting 8th grade step up night. This is an opportunity for 8th grade parents and students to receive more information on the transition from middle to high school And parents will receive a presentation in the auditorium, and eighth grade students will get a tour and Q&A session with current high school student leaders. And then saving the best for last, we held interviews for the junior student rep position today. There were 4 wonderful candidates that we interviewed, and for the first time, we ended up choosing 2 candidates for the junior position. One is Oliver Kuhn, who's right here, and Taru Magar. They both had really unique perspectives that we felt were necessary for the board to hear from students. Their first official meeting will be June 3rd. We'll formally introduce them both to you all, and I'm looking forward to working with them both over this coming year. Yeah, that's all.
Thank you very much. Well,
Thank you.
does the board have any questions? Student representative?
So we're gonna have 3 student rooms,
Yeah.
photos.
You got that chair right there, got the extra chair on the end.
Yeah, I mean, it was great. Alyssa and I participated in the process and reviewed, and Moen and Ali did a great job going through all of, soliciting the applications and reviewing the applications and providing us their feedback. And we met, was it last week or 2 weeks ago that we met, and we talked through the folks that we were gonna interview and put together the questions that we wanted to ask. And then, yeah, they just pulled it all together and coordinated everything. So they did a fantastic job. And I will say, to echo Moon's comments, I mean, they're really solid candidates that all interviewed. And I think that with the 2 that were chosen, there was a lot of discussion. I think we spent probably as much time discussing that as we did through the whole interview process. Just that these unique voices coming to the board, I think will be really, really helpful. And I think it's great for us to be amplifying those student voices more. So I think it was really appropriate for us to do that. So. Yeah, so, yeah, Oliver, I think your first meeting is gonna be June 3rd, so we'll probably have a chance to do more of an intro or not today.
Very excited for it. Thank you, Alyssa and Jen, for doing that. All right, so would the board be amenable to moving the discussion item update on the school board website right now?
Sure, yeah.
Yes, okay, so we'll do the discussion item update on the school board website right now. Is that between Jen and Joe?
Sure, I mean, I can tell you where we are with it. I had a meeting today with our web host. Up right now, so I can remember. Apogee, right? Apogee, I had a meeting with Apogee and there's a few things that are going on, and I have this in the board update also. In the very immediate term, we're gonna make a couple adjustments to the aesthetics of the site. In short, what we're gonna try and do is get rid of that entire menu link where you go, there's a million different things. We're gonna try and put bars across the top. Excuse me for not knowing the technical language, that'll make it easier to see. The longer ring, and when I say longer, I know this is urgent, so I'm not talking about a year from now. Next Friday, I have a meeting with them again to now start talking about redoing or re-imaging the entire website. So instead of us doing it piecemeal, we'll have our vendor come in. There will be, I've done this in the past where we've gotten a small committee together of people, so I'm sure Jen would want to be on that, and a few other folks, just to give an idea of what we're visioning for this, and then they would go in and really revamp the entire website. Typically what they do is they set up one while the other one's live, and they flip a switch and the new one's up. So I think that'll be more efficient than us trying to piecemeal, and what I don't want is all of a sudden our board pages look great and everything else looks horrible. So I think you might as well do it, and this is the time to do it. So you'll be hearing more about that in the future. We were in a meeting where I talked to the city folks about it, and I just stewed on it a little bit more and thought, let's do it right. So I've met with FG to figure out if we could do it. Great.
Any board questions, comments on that? One thought, would we, going forward, have, would a staff person be able to put the results of monitoring into the scorecard for us?
Yes, yeah, I mean, it's currently we have, there are users that have the ability to update the website and they'll continue to have that. And I will continue to have that kind of access too. But the big redesign that we're doing needs to be done by a professional, so they'll do that, and then. Any new users will be, like new principals and whatever, will be trained in how to update their website, you know, that kind of thing I can continue to do for the board.
Okay.
Yep.
That's great.
Yeah, it'll be good. I have no idea what their time frame will be. Again, our initial kickoff meeting is next Friday at 12:30.
And you have an intern this summer, but that's.
We do have an intern, and the intern is going to do some of let's get rid of all of these pages that don't exist anymore, broken links and all that kind of stuff. Not really doing any cleanup other than they're pulling the weeds, and what we're gonna do is planting the garden, if you like that analogy.
Right. Okay, so, we have another 15 minutes. Would the board be amenable to moving the consent agenda to right now?
Yes.
Yes, okay. So, on the consent agenda, the first thing, should we take a separate action to approve the bid for the roof projects, or should we do that as part of it? Okay, it's not marked, we'll do it just to be safe. So. On the consent agenda, there are the minutes of the May 6th meeting. And there are also hires and resignations. Are there any objections to the minutes, the hires, or the resignation retirements? No. Okay, hearing none, that part of the consent agenda passes. So now I would entertain a motion to approve the bid for the roof project.
I move.
Laura moves,
I'll second.
Alyssa seconds. Is there any discussion? And this is an action item, so we do take public comment on it. Any discussion of the roof project? You don't have to rush through it.
Yeah, the only question that I had was, I looked through the materials and I didn't know if I was missing something, if there was any details provided on this, because I didn't actually see. That was, yes, I don't know if I was around. Maybe I missed it. Was there information provided? Or were you gonna speak to it?
It doesn't look like the bid award letter is in here. Is that
Okay,
what you're looking for?
yeah, I mean, I didn't see anything, I saw it, that it was on a consent agenda, but then I didn't see anything related to the roof bid. Or
Yeah,
what exactly we were,
I'm noticing that now too.
okay,
I am happy to send it to you, and I'm happy to share it with you right now electronically, and I'm happy to send it to you.
So I think the motion should fail, and then we'll come back to this. At the end of the meeting, we'll have a very short consent agenda, item, and then, we can take a minute to look at it then. And then we don't have to approve it. We'll have a chance to. So. And how much time will monitor report 2.5 take? Is that fairly standard? Yeah, okay, sure. So would the board be amenable to taking on an action item? Monitoring 2.5 financial planning and budgeting. This is the one that comes up pretty often.
Can we get through it in 15 minutes?
Yes, Jean Marie Clark says yes.
Okay.
Is the board amenable?
sure.
Okay, then yeah, we'll do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nick, I want to share a document and I am going to struggle. Oh, I have cameras. Yeah,
You have it. Hold up.
yes, it is, hold on, make sure I get this right here.
Take this one.
Yeah. Please. We could do this, but I'm.
Let me make you a name.
It's only gonna take 5 minutes, and I'm gonna spend 10 minutes doing the technical difficulties part of this, so.
You are. Okay. You got this. Oh, God.
Okay. Why I was stumbling to come up here is because I'm not sure if this was shared in the board documents with you earlier, so I'll make sure that this is shared with you as well. You're right that I keep showing you the same information over and over again, and we haven't made it a ton of progress because that's just not how the business office exists in, works. But the one thing that I did want to show you is our current year-to-date financial report. That's what I'm sharing on the screen here. So a picture of where we're at as of, May 4th. So May 4th is when she ran this report for us to have it, to Delina in time to get it into your hands. So what you're going to see is our current, our working budget, our year-to-date expenses, things that are encumbered, pre-encumbered, and our balance. And so the most exciting thing on this right now is line number 12, where you'll see the transfer out of the general fund into the nutritional services that we agreed to do at our last meeting. And so right now, what we're looking at is excess fund, unspent funds of 1.7 is what we've got in excess. That is not being like held in a purchase order, is not being used from salaries and benefits. And so the biggest thing, and I think I said this to you all last time, if you're probably like, how do we have 1.7 left? It's a pretty small number in our, as a percentage, it's about 2% of our budget. So the swing is fairly small. The biggest reason is we have many vacant positions, and that is really, from looking and working through our budget, we spend our money on salaries here primarily, and roofs and boilers. But so that's the biggest reason why we have this excess. In the revenues, I'm just gonna skim down here quickly. We do have some swings, and the biggest is our special ed reimbursements in our extraordinary costs. So those are coming in different than what we had planned. And then, oops, let me find it. We have another swing in our the money that we get from the city, our impact fees, which is line 45 right here. So we anticipated, they told us we were gonna get $730,000 from them. Their last payment to us was $241,000, and that was included April. So the last payment that we will get from them will be just May and June. So likely will be less than $240,000, which like currently they owe us, sort of owe us, and what they said they were going to pay us was $335,000. So it's going to be, there will be an impact there. There's a difference there. So our revenues are down, but our expenses are down as well. So that's why we have the excess funding. And
So we're gonna be in the red even after the payments with the impact fees?
no, we are in the green, and I misspoke. Our whole swing is 1.4 million in the green, which is right here, 1 point.
No, I just with the impact fees.
The revenues are down on the impact fees. We don't know because we haven't got that final payment yet. And when we get the number from the city of what they think they're gonna give us for the whole year, it's a ballpark number. It's never at 100% accurate. So we think that there will be a deficit in what the anticipated revenue was from the city. So currently our excess is 1.4 million unspent, untapped in the whole budget, which is just under 2% of our whole budget. And the business manager and I had a conversation, and I think maybe Dan, you asked me this as we talked about, will we be at a place where we put together an operational reserve fund, much like our capital reserve fund? And someone asked me how much what I explained to you is it's very, very common for school districts to not have an operational reserve fund. And someone asked me, well, if we were to have one, how much do you think we should have in there? And the answer to that is about 3 months. If we could have 3 months, that would be great. I can't tell you what that number is up right now. But what I can tell you is if we end this year with, let's just say, $1 million left over, we would probably advocate to put some of that into an operational reserve fund. And what that does is it allows us to be even more, I was gonna say stringent, but like more cautious in our budgeting, knowing that we have a little savings account to use for our operational expenses, which are different from the boiler and blue, right, our capital reserve fund. So that may be something that you would want to consider as we work towards budgeting next year.
Great, thank you. Is there any board question or comment?
Can you scroll to the top of this page real quick? I just want to see what the headers are there again. And maybe can you just walk through what those headers mean so people understand? The working budget is what you actually have proposed.
Yep.
And then your year to date
What's been
is
spent?
what's been spent.
Yep. What is like being held, what's
Mhm.
encumbered, right? So for salaries, we budgeted 38 million. So far, we've spent 28 million. That means we've got 9 million left over. And even though we have 9 million being held in the salary bucket, there's 750 currently being held in proposed positions that are unfilled. So available, not being held for anybody, is $159,000. So this is the whole total, 1.7 million is the total of not being held for anything in any of these columns of salary, benefit, purchase services.
So that encumbrance is the delta from the working budget to the year to date. I don't have my calculator to plug that in to see that like, for example, 38 million minus the 28 million gives you the 9.3.
Yes.
Okay, but then you're committing that 750 is tied up, whether it's not an accrual per se, but it's committed to being spent. And then that balance there is, sorry, what's the balance? The 159
159, yeah.
is what's actually left over. So okay. Maybe.
Is there any other board question or comment?
Just that, I'm just following along with that. It looks like the biggest balances are in purchase professional and technical services and other purchased services. So that I would imagine that means we budgeted and we were expecting to do some work or have, and then those things didn't end up.
Yeah, and there's a variety of things that fall into those different categories. And I can't tell you exactly what they are, but they are some things that's related to education and some, at how we educate our students, but also things as they are related to how we maintain our buildings, right? Yeah, of course. So it's all good news. And, we continue to try to be as accurate as possible in our budgeting, but there always will be different swings because there are so many moving parts to this, but, I'm feeling really confident, comfortable about this. That's why we encouraged you to move that money over to the nutritional services fund. And we'll, as we get closer to the end of the year, I think we'll probably present this at one more time before, the end of the school year, so.
Great. Any further board comment or question? No, okay, well then I would entertain a motion to monitor policy 2.5. Financial planning and budgeting according to the rubric that we have in our board packet. Emily moves. Dan seconds. Any discussion? And this is a action item, so we entertain public comment on it. All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, the motion passed.
Oh,
right,
easy, thank
So,
you.
well, now we'll actually do the voting. So, monitor, so we have, remember, monitor report, outcomes and compliance plan. So on the monitoring report, I'm gonna go around and everybody's gonna say a number between 0 for not compliant to 4 for advanced compliance. Does that make sense? Okay, so we'll start with moments. 4. Okay. Emily,
3.
Jen,
3.
I'm a 3. Laura,
3.
Alyssa,
3.
Michelle,
3.
Dan, 3. Okay. The next part is the outcomes in terms of whether things are going well or not, however well it's reported. So I'm gonna ask each person 0 to 4 again. So I'll start with moment. 4. Right. Emily. 3. Jen,
3.
I'm a 3. Laura,
3.
Alyssa,
3.
Michelle,
2.
Dan, 3. Okay. And then, I don't think a compliance plan was presented, so I don't think we vote on that. Is the board in agreement with that? Okay. So, no compliance plan. Great, okay, so that concludes monitoring of 2.5. So now we get to the fun part of the meeting, which is the community forum on our ends policy. So here at South Burlington, we are a policy governance district. And what that means is that we have decided to govern ourselves as a school board and as a school district using ends. And ends are kind of like a special word for goals or priorities, right? And so the ends are supposed to represent what the community wants for our schools, for our kids. It's the whole community, whether or not you have kids in school or out of school. This community forum is the third of 4 community forums that we're holding before the board prepares a draft of edits to our current document that lists our ends, our goals. And so over the next few months, we'll be working on that document thanks to the input of board members and also people who show up like yourselves from the community. And then the goal is to, in September, pass changes to the ends policy. That'll be the first time they've been updated in 10 years. And then Joe, our superintendent, will be able to roll those priorities into a strategic plan where he actually makes the operational changes necessary to fulfill the priorities. And then there will be presumably changes in the next school year. So these community forums are they're technically a public comment section of our school board meetings. And the special thing about them is that as you in the public make comments, the board is encouraged to respond to you, have a conversation. So we don't have a speaker list or a speaker order. And so I would ask that people insert themselves when they think it's appropriate and just hopefully have a good discussion. So is there anything on the ends update committee? The 3 of us are tasked with organizing this thing. Does the ends update committee have anything that they would like to mention before we get started? with this community forum.
I just want to tee up one part. A few of us have been trying to, kind of, beat the bushes and get some former, SBHS graduates, to come to the meeting and talk a little bit about, you know, from their perspective, what prepared them well, what are the things that, as they transition to the other side of high school, into that post-secondary realm, whatever that may bring. What are the things that, with that perspective, they can say prepared them well or would have prepared them well? And so we tried to get a panel together, and I see that at least one, Jamin, did you bring a friend also, or a fellow graduate?
Oh, that's my campaign.
Okay. So maybe not, you didn't graduate from SB. So I think, it was hard to get folks available this time of year. There's a lot of things going on, a lot of kids traveling and, but Jamin has joined us, so I wanted to introduce, if you would like to inject yourself whenever you feel comfortable. What we're really asking is just to tell a little bit about yourself and, to answer that, you know, make comment on that preparedness question of, you know, now that you've experienced life on the other side of high school and you're making your path, what were the things that prepared you well? Because this is really what we're trying to understand is, when we look at our ends policies, are they spot on? Are there things missing? Are there, you know, what can we do to steer this district? And the, you know, how the learning opportunities and otherwise are structured within the schools to kind of point at that direction. So setting the direction is kind of a big deal. And we're looking for input from all community members that would like to participate.
Great. So, we have a number of people in the crowd that I recognize. Jeffrey, would you like to come up with?
Sure, I would love to start.
And please, let us know, who you feel you represent, from the community.
Oh, good evening. My name is Jeffrey Wilmette. I'm not from South Burlington. I actually live in Fairfax, Vermont. We do have an office in South Burlington. I am the business manager for the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers. We represent about 1,000 IBEW members across Vermont. Some employers are like Vermont Gas, which is in South Burlington, Fremont Power, all the electrical utilities, police officers, Ben and Jerry's, highway departments, wastewater departments, and approximately 200 licensed electricians and apprentices that we train over in South Burlington. So that's a little bit about what I do, a little bit about me. I grew up in Essex. I took tech classes at Essex Tech way back when. I then went into the Army. I got an engineering degree at BTC. I got a culinary degree. And then after I got all done that, I wanted to get back in construction. So I joined the IBEW and got my license, became a licensed electrician, went through the apprenticeship, got my master's license, got into the office. Now I'm part of the apprenticeship committee for what we do at the IBEW. We run a program of about 40 apprentices each year. We bring in about 15 to 20, depending on what we can bring into the mix. I sit on the Vermont Department of Labor Apprenticeship Advisory Board. I've been on that board for 15 years. I've been part of the Workforce Development Board for the Vermont Department of Labor for 15 years. So I went through the system. I took tech classes. I got a higher ed. I went to the apprenticeship program. I'm a staunch advocate for the apprenticeship program, and I know you guys aren't running the apprenticeship program, but what we found in working with the Department of Labor and just from my own experience that individuals, we also work with 7 tech centers around the law, St. Albans, Rutland, Hyde Park, Barry, Essex.
There's 7 of them that we work with, Montpelier. So we bring in their tech students and put them out with contractors. We've been doing that for probably 12 years now. And the tech programs have actually changed so that they can get more experience out in the field than what they used to get. Tech programs used to, I could only go out in the field 1 day a week, now it's 4 days a week. So they're getting more training and experience in the field than what they ever used to. They also are probably the best candidates we have because they have the drive to do it. They have some of the skills and aptitude and for the most part, the attitudes to be part of our program. Tech programs that we work with, if you have been in a tech program for a year or 2 years, those credits with that time and service transfers to our apprenticeship program. The state recognizes those years. We have the electrical world is a 4-year program, and then you get your license. So those years are credited towards your apprenticeship. So you could theoretically come to our program with 2 years experience in a CTE, have 2 years left of your training. I'm now 20 years old. I'm a licensed electrician. I'm making $38, $40 an hour. Paid benefits to include medical and retirement. So a 20-year-old individual could be making upwards of $80,000 to $100,000 a year just by getting 2 years under their belt through a CTE. I, again, am a staunch advocate of apprenticeships. And we've all paid our dues with high prices of college nowadays. More employers who don't require higher education are creating apprenticeship programs at their facilities. I work with the state. Again, we approve all the apprenticeships that come through the state by employers, and people are migrating and have migrated to the concept of earn while you learn. It's an amazing model. I work with 28 employers, 20 of them have apprenticeship programs. So, they enjoy it. They enjoy the fact that they don't have $100,000 of debt. I just had 2 daughters, twins, graduate from college. One wants to be a teacher and one wants to be in public health. So they have their assistance from us, but they have that college debt all lined up. But those are the careers that require higher education. Many careers don't. And we love, again, I've been doing this for 25 years. I'll do it for another 25 years. We work with the plumbers union, the carpenters union. They're right next door to us. If you folks had a CTE program, we would absorb all of your kids. I mean, that's how much we appreciate what tech centers do. And that's how many tech students we need to fill the voids. I mean, we need 30 electricians right now. We can't find 30 electricians. But
And Jeffrey, if I could just ask you from the perspective of a school board who's just setting the high level priorities for the superintendent to then implement, what do you think is important? What should a kid get out of school? Like what priority do you think we should have?
we'll let them figure out what they want to do and not be pushed towards, again, we kind of get stuck in this, hey, everybody got to go to higher education. I don't agree with it. I did it, but I don't necessarily agree with it. And for those of you, or us who have had children, we always start them out at an early age with toys to see how they develop. Which venue or avenue are they going to go down that makes them happy? My father always said, I don't care what you do, just be happy. He didn't tell me to join the army. I wanted to do it. He didn't tell me to become an electrician. I did it. He didn't tell me to get my engineering degree. I wanted it. Because of my experience with what I did and what I wanted to do, not because somebody was telling me to go get a higher education. So the sooner people are allowed to continue to experiment, which is what we do with education, they have the ability to figure out what they want to do. So sooner rather than later, you know, most places do a 2-year tech center or a 3-year tech center. But to expand it beyond that, I think that people are trying to get it into the middle school arena. There's less barriers there, I think. But I went to Fairfax and my wife was on the school board and we were trying to expand the school board and we had people in the old school folks not wanting us to expand the school because the tech center that they grew up 40 years ago was still good enough. Or like, no, it's not good. We want better for our students. So it took us a few years, but we got the expansion we needed to accommodate our students for the future, not for the past. So sooner the better. And we'll take them all. So we really will. So.
Well, thank you for your thoughts.
Yeah, thank you. If you do it, great. We need more of them. Because again, there's not enough, there are so many students that want to do it that don't have the opportunity to do it. You have 23,000 residents in South Burlington. You have construction and businesses going up all over the place with all the technology. You guys are like in the hub. Go for it.
Thank you.
Good. Thank you. All right, thank you and have a good night. If you have any questions, you got my email. We're good. Thank you. Thanks.
Any other public comment in the room?
Well, thank you for having me today. I appreciate the time to sit before you and you are speaking to someone that grew up on Woodland Place in South Burlington. I attended both the middle school and the high school. Fortunately, my parents chose to move to Shelburne when I was a senior. So I do have a CVU diploma. But I did spend a lot of time here and I was really hoping that I was going to see Don Marabella tonight. I haven't seen him in years. Someone I have a lot of respect. He was part of my journey. He was our vice principal, I believe, when I was in the middle school. And when I transferred over to the high school, he came along and started his duties there. Just the amount of care that he provided to the students, I think it's just remarkable. And I wanted to mention that before this board because I know he's still around. And if any of you see him, tell him Matt Musgrave said hello. So I'm with the Associated Builders and Contractors. Like I said, I want to just start with a personal experience. We talk about outcomes and where we're trying to get to. So my personal experience was I graduated high school and I was one of those. I waited another year to go off to college and I explored the private sector. I looked what was out there. I went to school for business and computer programming and I fell out of real estate agent. I fell out of college as a real estate agent at age 23 and I didn't have any money because I had just spent it all on going to college for a degree that I wasn't ever going to fulfill. And I was selling homes all over Chittenden County, here in South Burlington, Shelburne, Colchester. And I never really understood when I was a 23-year-old that I would meet other 23, 24, 25-year-olds that were buying homes from me. I never really understood that. It was puzzling for me because I was struggling to make ends meet. But what I didn't realize at the time, and I now know, is they were all driving contractor trucks. They were pulling up in these big hot pickup trucks full of tools. I didn't really know enough to know at the time, but rather than following the path that I went and taking out student loans, and there's nothing wrong with that. That's absolutely a very valuable pathway, but there's also other pathways. And I didn't realize that the pathway that a lot of these individuals took was to fall out, to learn a trade, to have pride in the work that they were doing. And by the time they were 23 in the industry, some of those individuals were making well over 6 figures, whether they were owning their own businesses or they were working for some of the great companies like at the time, Pizzagalley Construction, DEW, Engelworth Construction. Those are some that we see here a lot. So I joined the construction world about 12 years ago. I worked with another construction trade association, the AGC, which is operated out of Montpelier. And I'm now with the ABC, which is the Associated Builders and Contractors. We are the state sponsor for the NCCER program, which is the National Center for Construction Education and resource. And what that is, it's the industry recognized credential that we've registered with the Department of Education, also with the Department of Labor. And we certify the career technical education centers as well as their teachers. So when a new teacher is hired at a CTE, they call us, we chaperone them through the process. We also work within the prison systems. We certify them. We also certify a lot of employers across the state, whether they're members or not. As the state sponsor for the program, we do get involved and help not only construction, but electrical and plumbing and other groups set up these programs. So that's a little bit of the background of what the association does. We do other things, but workforce development in Vermont is one of the most important things that we do, because in our estimation, to have a healthy construction market here in Vermont, we need to have about 20 to 21,000 souls in the industry. And right now we're lingering around 17,000. And I'm well aware that by 2035, we're going to lose about 40% of those individuals to retirement. The average age in our business is, when I started 12 years ago, was 55. Add 12 years to that because they're just aging out as I just aged 12 years. So we're looking at this pitfall that we have coming up, and we have needs. We have to build hospitals. We need to build more housing. We need to build a lot of school construction needs to be done. We're starting to identify districts that have different challenges with the way that these buildings were built 100 years ago. And so we recognize that the demand for this industry is only going to go up, and we see people going down. So what happened when I came over from the other association to ABC about 3 years ago was we all recognized that we had an issue. And we, at that time, Seamus, if I start going along, just wave at me. But because I get very passionate about this topic. We have
Just remember that we have to write these ends, these priorities, these goals. And so if you have thoughts about like what we should be prioritizing as it ties to the story that you're telling, drop that into your story.
That's exactly the plan. Yeah, perfect. But I want to set the stage because this is something that is a big serious issue that we're dealing with. And about 3 years ago, I was approached by some of the largest general contractors and subcontractors in the state, inclusive of DEW, PC Construction, Engelberth, HB Cummings, Richard Electric, among a few others. And they sat us down in a room and said, we really appreciate the apprenticeship that we're running. And we were working with several different companies at the same time out of their buildings doing training. They said, ABC, we need you to develop a training center, and we need you to start putting people out into the workplace. We need to build a workforce program, and we need you to do this. So private industry put up a significant amount of money for us to be able to go acquire a facility over in Winooski. It's 10,000 square feet. It's right off the exit that you would go and get off of St. Mike's. It's known as the Vermont Construction Academy. We've got 10,000 square feet there, 2 large fully outfitted classrooms for in-class learning, and about 8,000 feet on the floor. That right now, if you walk in there, it looks like we're building an apartment building in the middle of this other giant building, as you saw. So the purpose of this originally was to work with employed individuals in the apprenticeship program. But we discovered through our research going to the CTE centers and also talking to school districts like yours, that there are some challenges with getting those individuals who are raising their hand saying, I want to learn a trade, into programs. I know that, when I went to school here in South Burlington, we have an auto shop. I'm not sure if that exists anymore. When I went to CVU High School, we had a wood shop. That definitely doesn't exist anymore. The CTE programs are now becoming over provisioned. We have in Essex, CTE on average about 120 applications every single year to get into their program, where only 35 people make it. And in order to get into that program now, you have to have the same grades and attendance as you would to get into the University of Vermont. So the challenge that we identified there was nowhere for these young boys and girls to go when they were coming out of school. And so what we did was work with the Department of Labor and the Department of Education, and we rolled out the first pre-apprentice program. We call it a pre-apprentice boot camp for commercial carpentry. That program has since morphed from just commercial carpentry to the core curriculum. I think as the last speaker just mentioned, the core curriculum that's going through the CTE programs, which gives you the safety certifications, you're learning power tools, you're learning hand tools, you're learning about different types of employment, including what the difference is between working in a union shop or working in an open shop. So we're giving them this full picture. And when they come out the other end of that program, we're having employers come in and give TED Talks. You know, electrical firms, plumbing firms, HVAC firms, traditional carpentry firms. So that the individuals that are in these courses are starting to ask questions. They're starting to identify what their personality might draw them to. And once they're completed that program, they get a certificate from us and they could go jump into the union. Or they could go jump into an open shop that has an apprentice program and just keep going. So I think the last speaker said choice. What we're doing is creating choice and educating these young folks. We were doing this with people that had graduated high school in our first year. But what we discovered working with Essex, Colchester, these are all schools that are active with us now, CVU, now Rice High School, Burlington, that they have a bunch of young people that wanted to get into the programs that are now, we're calling them, you know, lost young people. They don't have the CTE to go to. They're in their junior year. They're starting to say, what do I have going on at the other end? And now we've created memorandum of understanding with these schools that I just mentioned, and they're coming to us and they're taking that CTE curriculum 1 day a week through their semester. They're doing it through different programs right now. Some are IEP, some are flexible pathway programs that are getting there. And schools like Rice have actually added the cost of the tuition to their tuition that they charge to the consumer. So they're coming to us while they're still coming to the school, getting their normal high school diploma, and they're coming out and they're learning the trades from a licensed teacher that we have as an instructor in our facility who actually came from a CTE program. So really, if I was going to urge the district to look at pathways for people, is to create those opportunities that are out there. We're right up the street here, and to be able to supplant someone for work. And to be clear, we're not competing with CTE. If you have a place that you can put someone into a CTE, that's the best place for them. They're going to go there and do that. We're here to help out with the same curriculum, with the same expertise. And on the back end of that, what we have is a large swath of employers who are members of our association, and they're vetted by us before they come in. These are employers that are responsible contractors. They pay the best in the industry. They have all of those benefits. We run an ERISA trust so that employers can put money into this trust fund that actually comes back out, and they're paying for this additional training on behalf of those individuals. And oh, by the way, when you go through the apprenticeship programs, you're also guaranteed that you're going to get a raise at the other end of that. That's part of the deal that we have with the state of Vermont through that apprenticeship program. So really what we're able to do is with some of those individuals that may be lost in that junior or senior year, we can bring them over for a very, very low cost compared to building your own center. And we can actually give them that. And some of the results that we've seen so far, you know, I had one of the teachers from Essex came in, and he had 7 people. I believe they were on IEPs. And he walked into my office and he said, "What did you do to our boys?" And I said, "Well, what do you mean?" They all have pencils in their hand. They're taking notes. I don't understand how you got them to do this. We've been trying to do this for them for a very long time. Well, I'm going to hand it to our instructor. He's had a lot of time. He grew up working in the construction industry. He's passionate about it. And then he went off to Vermont Tech, became a construction manager, opened his own company, and then fell in love with teaching. And then he went back to the school. So what we're able to do with some of these young people, in addition to helping them out, learning those tools, learning the trade, introducing them to employers, is we're also helping them up here too. They feel that someone, and they identify with somebody that cares about them. We've done things like bring in our own clothes so that they can go get interviews and stuff like that. We put together funds for people that can't afford to buy boots, so that we have a deal with Danform Shoes down the road. So the best part of this is those individuals that come through this program, and this is a frustration that I've addressed with the CTEs, is when you're done with them, and when the CTE is done with them, they go, and you don't know where they go. When they come through our program, we match them up with one of our employers and put them into an apprenticeship program. We now track them in Rapids through that practice that they go. So we're able to see what they're doing for the next several years. Our apprentice program is 18 months, over a 1.5 year period. So we're able to actually track the success of these individuals as they come out, and really create an ROI, not only for the employer, not only for the students, but also for the community that they work in. So I would second what he says. We really stand by apprenticeships as a way to help people learn the industry. We found that it's a way that employers can give back and help them grow. Because at the end of the day, that is the lifeblood of these companies, whether it's an employee-owned company like PC or a privately owned company like DEW, their lifeblood is the people. We're growing them, and we would encourage you to hop on board with us.
The Vermont Construction Academy,
Yes,
I signed the MOU yesterday.
thank you.
We are in.
Okay, I could have been the last runner. I got
Here when I signed. We're very excited about this. Thank you.
Great, thank you very.
Thank you very much for showing, and I'm sure that if we have more questions.
I can leave cards for you.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry that I have this CDU diploma. I wanted to stay here. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Kendall Smith and I'm the Commissioner for the Vermont Department of Labor, which you just heard a lot about from the previous two speakers. So that was great. I'm thinking about your question on priorities, and so I'll try to focus my feedback right now there. I live in Barry and I'm actually a Spalding High School graduate, but my drop of South Burlington is my sister and her husband and their kids live like 2 miles down the street, Sunny and Lennon, and they will be South Burlington students. So I also offer this, personally on behalf of their futures as my little anecdotal connection here to your community. So anyway, we tend to think about workforce readiness in terms of what are you doing when you're 30, 40, 50, what's your career? So if it's a straight path. And so we should think about how we're preparing people for that, but it's also more immediate. And I think, or I'd encourage you all to think about it more in immediacy, especially with high school students that are working right now, that have part-time jobs, that have summer jobs, that are trying to do internships. There is an immediate connection to this for the school to be supporting those situations, in addition to what does your lifelong career journey and pathway look like. And then nothing I'm going to say right now is necessarily novel. It's things that you all are probably dealing with outside of your role on the South Burlington School Board on a daily basis in your day jobs. But one of the things that I really want to think about and I encourage you all to think about as you're doing this priority work is that soft skill and that professional development. One of the things that all of your students are going to likely have in common is they are going to work at some point in their life, either for a little amount of time or a long amount of time. They're all going to do different things, right? Some of them are going to go be biologists, some of them are going to be engineers, lawyers, some of them are going to own their own businesses, some of them are going to be in retail and restaurants, but that's all work and you all need that foundation of professional soft skills in order to be successful. So whether that's show up on time and accountability, making eye contact, can you communicate clearly and in full sentences? Those are things that you all in the school can work into every subject that you offer. It doesn't have to be a one-off conversation or a one-off event. I think there's lots of ways to apply this, even if we're in art class and I just made some really cool pottery and now I have to stand up and I have to present to my class about this piece of pottery and why I made it and what it represents to me. That is public speaking. And that student can get recognition for public speaking and communication within the context of their art class. So there's lots of ways to think about this creatively through that thread of K through 12 in all settings. And I would actually encourage that approach and that not be these one-off events, one-off conversations, or only the type of development you get if you're in a CTE program or a work-based learning setting, or having your kind of check the box conversation with your career counselor. Think about how through K-12 and age appropriate and developmentally appropriate ways, you can be instilling accountability, you can be instilling communication, you can be instilling adaptability. Homework deadlines, another great one, right? I am a parent of an 8-year-old and a 10-year-old. They're only in 2nd and 4th grade. They don't have a lot of homework yet, but I am kind of like, where's the homework? And where's the deadline? And so I'm trying to find ways just around my own house, to instill like this thing needs to be done and this is when it needs to be done by. Because later in life, you're gonna have a boss that's gonna say, I need this thing done by 3 o'clock on Thursday. And that should not send you into, you know, an existential anxiety crisis. You should be able to have those time management skills and be able to produce. So there's ways, again, this can be applied in multiple different ways throughout your curriculum, throughout your experience in the K through 12 system that you all are shepherding. You heard a lot about kind of career connected learning from the last two people who spoke, so I won't necessarily go down that rabbit hole. But I would think about prioritizing, whether it's internships, CTE, work-based learning, job shadowing, mentorship. Any of those opportunities are great. I know that each school kind of has their own approach to how they implement these pieces, whether it is work-based learning / internship / community service learning. But make sure you are offering those experiences and you're offering them early and often. So again, not a one-off conversation, check the box, you're graduating, what are you doing next? And then the student thinks about it only that one time and it feels like a homework exercise. It's not reality. There's ways, starting in kindergarten, you know, that good old career day, you know, what do you want to be when you grow up? And you're bringing in people to talk about what they do in the community. Do it every year, do it career day every year, K through 12. I'll be there. Department of Labor can help you get some employers or others to come in and do that work. And then it obviously can ramp up in its intensity and its structure as you get older. But if we treat it like one-off, it's, you know, it's not going to work. It's got to be something that we're speaking with kids about, again, in ways that make sense depending on their age the entire way through. So I'd encourage you all to think about how you prioritize that and kind of modernize your career guidance approach that you're doing. The last two things I'll mention, again, digital literacy. We don't need to go down like a large AI rabbit hole necessarily right now, but every sector can benefit and will use AI. Booking platforms and hospitality. Trades, again, we're big fans of the trades. I hope that goes without saying, and a large part of what I do is also encourage, just like you've heard from Matt and Jeff, taking up the trades as a career path for people to be successful here in Vermont. But drone technology, right? Safety on the work site. Like it's not necessarily all ChatGPT and software engineering. Every sector, you know, if you guys have been to the doctors recently and they say, can I turn on Scribe and report our conversation? Right there, that is a function or a use of AI and again, evolving technologies. So think about how, again, from a young age, students are taught to interface with it, to use it, understand how to be efficient with it, responsible with it, and effective with it. Then lastly, your partnerships. So right now, again, we've had a few of us here talking about workforce readiness. I'm curious if you're thinking about what your feedback loop is to sustain this into the future. And if you work with the regional Chamber of Commerce, the Lake Chamber or GBIC or RDC, or when and how you invite employers to come in and speak directly with you about what they need. Because the future of work is evolving, it is changing, and this is a snapshot in time. But do you have kind of some sort of employer think tank group that you're regularly tapping into for feedback as you're trying to develop approaches? Again, I assume many of you have day jobs in your own businesses and you can apply your own experiences to that. But do you want a formal structure or process? And I wouldn't say overthink it and have the perfect be the enemy of the good, but to create that sort of feedback loop to sustain this over time. Department of Labor would be happy to be part of that coalition if you ever put it together. We want to be your partner and appreciate this opportunity to come in and meet you all and share some thinking. I also have cards, but if you were just to Google Department of Labor, you'll find me on the website as well. But thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much. Comment? Yep.
Good evening. My name is Sriram Srinivasan. I'm going to make comments on two topics. I think one from my association with the South Burlington City on the Economic Development Committee. I believe Nicola Brock and Ilana couldn't participate today. I don't know if they're going to participate in the future sessions. But I just wanted to connect what the three people I had up and spoke about. I don't know how many of you have followed the economic development plan development effort by the South Burlington City. So it happened over a period of a year and a half. I would encourage you to go and look at the plan itself on the website. It's one of the most impressive economic development plan put together in Vermont. I believe it won an award recently. And what I want to emphasize around this is the fact that the plan really focuses on what does the city need to do to develop coalitions and alliances to promote proper workforce development. Like the two gentlemen who came up and spoke here, number of CEOs and business managers over the last 3 years came and spoke at the Economic Development Committee about their specific needs of what type of workforce they need going forward. And how do we actually retain, that type of talent? So I would encourage you to, you have some of those CEOs as parents in your school on Logic, Beta. So I would say seek out to those parents and develop some coalition around what specific skill set would they like you to develop. So please reach out and please look at the economic development plan. There is a significant workforce development aspect. I think the South Burlington School District can play a significant role. The second part that I want to speak about, I filled out the survey and gave my input on the process itself. There are really 3 things that I highlighted as part of the process that is important, I think. I think the first one is historical performance. I think you're on this journey of developing new priorities and new goals, but do we understand how well we did in the past with the current? And I have not seen anything. And so if I'm missing something, please guide me. So with that comment, the reason I want to focus on that is accountability starts with having metrics that you can track and report on. If the community and the board is having difficulty in tracking how well we are doing, that says something about accountability. So I would say accountability should be the fundamental theme of these priorities. You can have a lot of fancy priorities, but if you don't hold people accountable, the lady ahead of me spoke about the importance of homework. It's accountability, right? So it's a simple concept, but I think as adults, we should be thinking about how we hold people accountable. So the second aspect that I wanted to emphasize is around when you're trying to go through this process, what is the benchmark you're trying to emulate to? Is it a specific school or is it a different standard set by Vermont? I think that is important. So I think that checks your aspiration on how far you're trying to reach. And the third one is around excellence. I see the word excellence being used very lightly. Excellence at infinite cost doesn't make sense. Excellence at the cost that the taxpayer is willing to pay is the right approach. So from a process perspective, I would suggest that the committee looks at those 3 aspects before you finalize your priorities. As far as benchmark, I did some homework, and I have to say the benchmark you could use is not too far away. It's the Burlington School District. They have an ENS policy that is about 6 or 7 years old. They have a 5-year strategic plan that is based off of the ENS policy. And I will just highlight what stands out for me in their approach. They have specific targets, not vague aspirations. Okay. They are focusing on disparity reduction, which means they take a focus group and make sure that that focus group is consistently performing to a specific standard. They have clear milestones, which means timeline. By what time, whether it is 50% improvement or 90% reduction, whatever metric you choose. And they have 4 areas. I think it's somewhat similar to South Burlington. One is academic proficiency. It's clearly spelled out with metrics. Second is equity and achievement gaps. Third is outcomes and accountability. And the fourth is belonging. And all of them have good metrics. So my second part of the comments is really around the process. I'm not an expert on defining outcomes in the school district business, but I do know when I see accountability and when I don't. So thank you for the opportunity.
So can I ask you, Burlington is the part of a community of schools collaborative. So I think, and that's what you're talking about. And so I'm just learning about it now, and it's basically how Winooski operates as well. And I think what you're saying, I think it's any accident that the community is very supportive of their public schools because they feel like they're a part of it. The schools are a hub of the neighborhood. And so, we talk a lot here about like radio ads and this and that. I think what you need to do is make it part of the community. When you go into Winooski High School, there's a dentist in there, there's a clothing shop, there's a cafe. You can go there and you can be a part. And I think Burlington does that as well.
Sure.
And I think if people see everything, I think it's with UVM and there's federal money that goes along with it. It is a very powerful program and it's very clearly outlined, like as you said.
Yeah, and so I would encourage you to look at the 5-year strategic plan. So it spells out specific programs and activities. I mean, I have no basis for comparing as far as performance of Burlington, but on paper, they seem to have a good process. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
How's it going? Well, it's good to be back. It's been a few years. Oh my gosh. I'm Javin Sears. I'm a 2020 grad from South Burlington High School. What a year to graduate. COVID year grad. That was a journey. I eventually got into UVM, started in 2022. There I'm studying business, also part of the debate team there, the Lawrence Debate Union. You're finishing up here in the summer. Well, what else have I done? Gosh, I've done too many things. I'm also an intern at the Vermont Center for Emerging Technologies, which is under VCET, which is a venture capital firm, which also gives money to small tech companies to be successful. They're also like 24/7 free advising for tech advice and whatnot. But yeah, I'm from South Burlington. I went through, the elementary school there in Chamberlain. I went through the middle school at Tuttle. Obviously went through South Burlington High School for 4 years. And I really appreciate the question that was asked, because I really do think students should have an opportunity to really be able to explain and articulate what was their experience that they got through, high school, especially in today's climate of like education in general. Especially when you go on to college and now you're faced with a whole bunch of different expectations and trying to get ready for the workforce as well as going into the community and be able to actually make an impact on not only young people, but just also in general. So I do appreciate this opportunity to come here and look forward to being at the next one. I don't know the definition of what you guys might consider end policies, but I will at least give you my articulated I should have announced this first, that I'm running for Vermont State Senate as well. Probably been the first thing I should have said. But yeah, so I decided to run for Vermont State Senate here in the Chittenden Southeast District, which consists of South Burlington, southern part of Burlington, Jericho, Underhill, Richmond, Shelburne, Charlotte, Heinsberg, Bolton, St. George. And there's one more, probably a little small, I'm forgetting one. Williston, of course. The reason why I'm kind of running before I kind of get to, why I think education is a big part of my platform is that because I think that a lot of our standards have been kind of reduced. And I think that has a lot to do also with our public education system, where we're spending $28,000 per kid. We have seen in the last 2 decades a decrease of almost a third of our K through 12 students because families can't afford to live here. Families are really difficult to live in South Burlington, difficult to live in Williston, all over Chittenden County. Forget about Burlington. but I really believe that the standards have been lowered, and why is that the case? Well, I would say through my high school experience, I wouldn't put myself in any political box necessarily. But as I've gone throughout college, I'm in one of the most liberal states and one of the most liberal towns at the most liberal university in the country, arguably. And I've come out on the other side as a conservative. And I think the words playing with, progressivism or conservatism, you can get really confused and like, what do these mean and why? Like, especially, considering politics today, obviously. But, I became a conservative because I kind of realized a lot of our expectations in the school system have really decreased. And what are those things? Well, I was part of the first ever class to have to go through a, what do they call it? The proficiency system. The regular education system, A through F grading, and then, proficiencies, you're graded on a scale of 1 to 4. We were part of the hybrid system where, it was basically, I don't know, 50% of your grade was one or the other. Could be a little bit wrong on that. But, I was like, why are we being graded on 1 through 4? For what things? And I think a lot of the, even teachers, or you want to say we're overstaffed, we have one of the highest staffing to student ratios in the whole country, Vermont in general. We're paying absurdly amount of money. I think here in South Burlington, it's $73.9 million a year for our school budgets. And I've been in the community. I help out in the community. I help run the South Burlington Dolphins, which we're in our 60th year, celebrating our 60th year. Way back when, oh my gosh. We kind of see, I think throughout this program is like, what are the kids also being taught, but what are they like? What are their values, and what are the families that are actually moving into South Burlington, and what are they getting year to year, year out? And we haven't been seeing a lot of great outcomes, to be quite frankly with you. I'll speak personally about myself, is when I kind of look back, I feel like there's a lot of these, the surroundings, the political climate in South Burlington in our school system, which is under the progressive moniker. At our elementary schools, we fly the LGBTQ flag, we fly the Black Lives Matter flag. Not to say there's anything necessarily wrong with those two things specifically, but, do businesses fly those flags around, in businesses across communities across Vermont? I'm kind of not sure. I'm left to like, what are those really small things that we're allowing to kind of get into our classroom, especially when you walk through those front doors. And especially with, families, with young people, is that you don't really get to see what's on the inside, with your kids, and how many hours they are spending, with students. You're spending 7 hours in the classroom, 5 days a week for the most part. And in Vermont, we obviously don't have school choice. So if you live in South Burlington, you got to go through the South Burlington school system, and it's extremely hard to pay for non-public school education in South Burlington. And so families, it makes it extremely hard for them to be able to do anything else with their kids. And sometimes it's their only option, unfortunately. And so, when we see $28,000 per kid, and we look at what are the outcomes of when kids get out of high school, and what are their values, and are they going to school? Is college, worth it even nowadays? It depends for what. I think one thing that, is really important, I think, is obviously the STEM in general. And I think South Burlington, I think we just what, the math championships, I'm pretty sure they just won. I'm pretty sure.
Robotics and math.
Robotics,
Yeah. Really good programs. I think I almost went to one of those robotic tournaments that was in UVM at the at Gutterson. Who won that? You won that? Maybe I should have known robotics. Dude, see, you've proven my point. Oh my gosh. You should join my campaign team. But I say that all to say, because, South Burlington has one of the highest graduation rates in Vermont. I think it's about 90% or something like that, compared to the average about 80%. And, obviously I graduated, I skipped my teeth, but just because it was COVID. But I feel like a lot of people get through education today in public school by getting through it. And I don't think there's a focus or there's not even an accountability system with students to just to get by. They're just going to get by, but there's nothing preventing them from actually be able to say, okay, let's make it really rigorous and difficult. And I don't think we should be reducing standards like the proficiency systems and stuff like that. And also allowing these ideological biases to be, playing into our school system. And I think I support students being able to actually have, their voices heard and protest. I think that's a good thing. And I think that really, but at the same time, kind of raises an ear of like, or an antenna of like, okay, what are the values that may be going on? you know, in school systems. And I would be really curious to hear more, especially with, when it comes to like raising, you know, school budgets and whatnot, and how that actually affects. And, you know, I remember I came up in a time, well, not only with the name change era in 2016, but, you know, also with the school budgets going through the roof, and we wanted to put together you know, South Burlington wanted to put together one of the most expensive schools in the country. Forget how much money it was, about $300 million that was proposed. And I was told as a senior, junior, senior, I mean, they talked about it for years, just kind of like how they did Market Street for 20 years, took them forever to do that. That, you know, this was gonna be a good outcome, and that we need this school and we need this, and I was hearing it from, you know, staff and as well as teachers, it's like, this is a good thing. And then I get older and I get to the real world here, and I'm like, gosh, we can't afford that. Property taxes are going through the roof. I know tons of people who are paying tens of thousands of dollars because, you know, because of the spending that has to go to the education system. And then now I know that's obviously not something that the school board or the school district can fix on their own, because that's a state policy. But I know that the pushing of these school budgets does go on as well in school systems. And, you know, it goes on the front papers of, you know, of our local papers and whatnot. And, you know, we kind of just look at the outcomes of that spending. You know, I think we are spending too much. I think, you know, we're also giving, you know, our HRA plans that are, you know, super premium for teachers that don't go as well to, you know, regular citizens. And overall is like, if we would have, you know, got a school system that was that much money, people would have been gone. I mean, we're already losing in enrollment, and I think we're also losing in the outcomes of when you get out of school and you go to college. I feel like I could have been, you know, done pretty well going to college, you know, with going with an alternative non-public school education as well. And it's hard. I want to see what would be the balances between those two aspects of, you know, comparing and contrasting. And so I kind of say that, and also I'll kind of end on this point, and well, I'll end on two separate points, but before my last one, you know, I'll say is when it comes to teachers trying to advocate for the increasing school budgets that are hurting families in Vermont, my family, other families that have lived here, and, you know, can't be able to afford it, is that, you know, people who are talking about it, especially our teachers, I would love to know, because I love my teachers. I came up through, you know, I had really good teachers, really smart people. You know, I love them. But, you know, at the same time is, you know, how I would love to know what the percentage of our teachers are actually living in South Burlington. You know, how many of them that actually live here that actually are going to be affected by such tax policy in there. I don't know what the exact number is, not necessarily public information, correct me if I'm wrong. But I think that's very concerning. Because if teachers don't want to live here in South Burlington, what does that actually say about, you know, why should we force taxpayers, or, you know, propose to them when we all know who's going to come and vote for these increases in the school budget is, you know, it's a hard thing to deal with. So on my last point, I'll kind of just say is, you know, South Burlington has done a lot for me, and I came through elementary, came through middle school, went through the high school, did a lot of different clubs there, you know, still friends with a lot of people there. You know, have been also involved in, you know, helping out the track team, as well as volunteering earlier this year with the debate team as well. And because I've been doing debate at UVM for the last few years, and that's been, you know, amazing for my education that maybe I should have done here. I believe that was Miss White that was running that. I might be misinterpreting on that. But anyways, I think it's very concerning for, you know, especially as I run for office, is especially the spending and the overspending. And I would love to see something get done about that. Because I don't think it should be this high, and I don't think it needs to be, especially with young people coming through here. If you're doing a robotics, I'm sure you're learning a lot more in the club than you are probably in the classroom. I don't mean to put you in the spot, dude. But, you know, or computer science or math, I think I went to school, I shouldn't call them out, but I would. I'm not calling him out. He was a really good friend of mine, Rupalin Sivakumar. You know, he's a really good friend. He went to MIT, you know, super smart guy, was a math champion, was a chess champion. And, you know, I asked him because I knew what his like kind of homeschooling life or home life was. And it was really a lot of homeschooling when it comes to math and when it comes to a lot of these STEM related things. And so, you know, you're going to learn a lot more, I think, in the real world, is what I think I could say as a high school student, or coming out now being a college student. And the fact is, if that is the case, and to be able to be better prepared for the real world, and the fact that I could just learn that elsewhere, go through non-public education, then I think, you know, young families should be able to do that. And I don't know why people who just try to move here or Cause South Burlington has been struggling demographically for many years is, you know, why are we, you know, paying so much for this? We're forcing people to pay it. So anyways, that's a lot to say. I know there's a lot there. But I appreciate this opportunity to be able to speak here. And do have a lot of respect for the school system as well, having been involved and also helping out my community of South Burlington. Being from here, having grown up here basically all my life, I think it's my job and my responsibility to at least articulate, you know, what are my values and why is that so important, especially as I run for office. I think people in office should really try to be as clear as possible on what they believe in. And you know, we don't see that a lot. But I'm gonna try to do my best to do that and represent South Burlington in a good way. And I really look forward to the campaign trail. As a 24-year-old, you know, I'm the youngest to ever run. So, or the youngest to run. I don't know about ever to run, but if I were to win, I would be the youngest. But anyways, so I appreciate the opportunity. I'd love to talk to, you know, any of you anytime. Please reach out, even if you're in the robotics. You should go to the VSET too. You should go check that out. Anyways, thank you guys, appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
And if any questions, please let me.
Do we have anybody online?
No.
Okay. Is there any other comment in the room? No. Is there any board comment, board discussion? This is meeting 3.
I would say just from everything we've heard tonight, I came back to some of the feelings that I had when I was first learning about ends policies and strategic plans, and how lofty and impossible they seem to be. Every single student will do this, and it seems to me that it would make more sense to have an actual goal that is attainable with benchmarks, with real aspirations that really aren't so pie in the sky. I understand you want to shoot for the best you can get, but I really feel like what I've heard tonight has made me it's really resonated with those first feelings I was having when I was looking at strategic plans from school districts and how they were all really seems absolutely impossible. And so sort of like, why we don't have to work that hard if we're never going to achieve that. So I'd love the idea of something that is more attainable, with that the kids could also see as actual goals and in language that people can understand what we're trying to say and what we want for our kids. So yeah, it's been really great to hear everyone's opinions and experience and inspired.
One downside of having aspirational statements that we can't measure well is that you don't know how far you are from them, right? And that's kind of the key, is to know.
Yeah, you just speak, just speaking to that.
I just want to make 2 comments. I believe with the education reform that Governor Scott is leading, there is an aspect of end standards. I think it's called gold standards. I think it's going to come out. They're going to have some type of policy where some outcomes could be universal. So in this process, I'm just giving a heads up. As you finish this process, you may hear something from the state on some mandatory outcomes that you need to be part of. I'm happy to forward you information on that. The second thing that I didn't talk much about my background. You know, I manage businesses based on manufacturing, globally. And the biggest issue in, the 2 gentlemen who represented the electrical industry and construction industry talked about, I went through that in my professional career 15 years ago. Hard to find people. There was a whole bunch of manufacturing sites where we had what we call them as legacy sites. People in their 50s, they worked for the company for 35, 40 years. There is no one in the pipeline. And you go around to the local schools, this was 10, 15 years ago. People are not interested in becoming a chemical operator or master electrician. Everybody was aspiring for some academic program. And there was a huge mismatch. And we suffered through that and, so I just want to reinforce that schools need to be aligned with what is happening around from an industry perspective, from a workforce perspective. So I would encourage you to reach out to more people and get input on this. And that's why I think being connected to the economic development team would be very informative. So thank you. Thank you.
Joe, does the school offer any kind of like career testing that might show where a person's interests on?
It's the ACT, isn't it?
No, I'm talking about career testing, like,
Yeah,
and
like-
that was the
Well, their
military.
interest inventories, actually.
That's what the ACT tests, it will tell you what your.
We have not like anything like super mandatory or formal, but I know when the guidance sets you up with SCORE, which is like the things they use to manage college applications, they like send out a like career quiz type of thing. Like you answer a bunch of questions and they give you something that they think you might be interested in.
Yeah, so I mean, I don't know the answer to that specific question. I remember when I was in high school, they sat us down and we had to take the little nuts and bolts and put them on. They measured all that kind of stuff to see what our aptitude was. I don't know what, if anything, we're doing here other than, I know we do ACT, SAT, but that's not, I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah, I mean, it would just seem redundant to, for, like, I had a cousin. I don't wanna say he was adrift, but he just didn't know what he wanted to do. He was given a test, I can't remember what it was. And when they were going over it, he said, well, his top score was like a chef. He's like, I love to cook. And boom, he went to a culinary institute. He's been a chef for 30 something years. So, and he's happy. I was just wondering if we had anything like that might be able to point kids who aren't sure where their interests lie to you.
Have you heard of, I mean, there's a book, I remember reading it years ago, What Color is Your Parachute? Yeah, and I mean, I'm just looking, interactive career and self-discovery book, and we have it for high school and college students. It helps young adults identify their favorite skills, core values, and ideal work environments to plan their future careers and college majors. And some schools, I'm just looking it up, actually do have it where they integrate it into the curriculum, starting young. And as was it Kendall, who from the Department of Labor had said, it's so bringing this in consistently throughout school, so. Not just like a one.
You wanna discover that early.
You gotta start.
Yeah.
So I don't know,
And
maybe-
it's not because we're trying to like have people decide what jobs they want. When they're in kindergarten, it's that they wanna like, like for in my case. I stayed in from recess in middle school and did the thing that I now do for my day job, and I love it, and it's like but discover that early instead of waiting until junior or senior year,
I mean,
so.
if it's something that we can establish here that could help,
I'll ask, our folks to see what we do. I'll put it in the board update if we do or not, but I think, if not, I'm hearing the same thing you are. There's a huge thirst for more of these. Exposure to a lot of different, skills and classes and allowing kids to explore so they can figure out what they want to do.
yeah,
And
it's like.
figure out what they wanna do for the purposes of living in joy, not necessarily
So,
getting paid.
right, I mean,
Right.
Exactly, and it's like has been said here by many people, everybody, not everybody. But a large majority think that, well, you have to go to college, and that's just not the case. You don't have to go to college. And some people just aren't built for it. But they are built for going through an apprenticeship program, or, that's might be where their true interest or passion lies.
And I will say too, during this interview process with students on the school board, one of the things that really impressed me was there was a student who had indicated that they really missed the hands-on learning. They said, we love, elementary school, middle school, you're doing hands-on learning, and then all of a sudden you get into like high school and here's a test and you know, or study this, what was it?
You just talked that all day or
Talk
something like
that.
that.
And it's like,
yeah.
School's not fun. And
Yeah.
so part of the, you know, part of that is, you know, that's part of the reason we wanted to have this diverse perspective and someone who's gonna be studying in the CTE next year. So it's like, we wanna hear these voices and bring that in. Because I think it's really important to
It's
understand.
like, yeah, my nephew, college, boom, wasn't for him. Now he went through an electrical apprenticeship program and now he's making the big bucks.
I know there used to be maybe it's called the Career Development Center, in South Burlington. When I was in school there in the nineties, and it felt like it was very much geared toward people who were not choosing to go to college, but I could see it could be incredibly helpful for all students. And this one woman, I think her last name was Lavande, she was amazing, and she developed these really deep relationships with the kids and helped them realize that there are careers. It reminds me of what you were saying about bringing people in the community in to say, this is what we need in South Burlington, this is what we need in Vermont. And kids thinking, well, I could do that job, or that one sounds interesting to me, and just, so, I can't remember exactly what it's called, but
Is it the Vermont Student Assistance Corporation?
no,
Okay.
this was, actually in the school.
Oh, okay,
There was a
gotcha.
person, she worked in the library. It was like a little office within the library, and
Okay.
kids would go and work with her to find, they would get jobs while they were still working, and like, or while they're still in school. No, anyway, just, I feel like when I was going down to college, there was this not this idea of what a career was next. It's just,
Right,
well, I go get my liberal arts degree and then
right.
whatever happens from there. But I think it could be really helpful to have something like that.
And the middle schoolers, I think, said that when they were here a couple of weeks ago, like they're thinking about it already. So there's the appetite.
Yeah, there's something called like the strong test with strong interests.
I took
Test
that
or
test.
strong interest in.
Yeah. I'm looking-
inventories or surveys.
Yeah, I'm looking at a site right now, the Vermont Student Assistance Corporation, they have a planning and college. Do a career self-assessment to learn about who you are, what you enjoy, what you're good at, academics. I sent an email to our guidance to find out what do we do.
Yeah, great, thanks.
I'll let you know.
So maybe this is a great transition point for us to go into an action item on monitoring ends.
Yeah.
Which is our monitor report for today. Is the board amenable to moving on to the next item?
I just want to say thanks to everyone who came and
Yes.
shared. That's really great.
Thank you very much. It's nice to meet you. We continue to come and make comments to us.
And we are monitoring an ends policy.
Yes, we are.
Two of them.
One, yeah.
So to
1.1.
Srini, your point on accountability, this is our accountability, yeah.
Is that the session? Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Sorry if I'm out of order, but we already moved on.
You are.
All right, so the discussion item that was originally scheduled to happen after the community forum on the school board website update. That happened around 6:15 this evening, so we've already covered that. So we're now gonna go straight on to the action item monitoring report 1.0 ends. Specifically 1.1 disposition for learning and 1.3 personal development.
All right, we're gonna
So
start with
1.1.
And I will, Nicole's gonna do that one, and I will state that this is the first time that we've looked at the there are 4 elements in 1.0, and they've always been combined for one monitoring report. This is the first time that we are breaking them down into 4 separate categories, and also we've learned that there has not been a monitoring report on policy 1.0 since 2022. This is the first time in 4 years that we've even talked about this, so Srini is going to be very disappointed that.
There's no.
Her responses are gonna be, there's not a lot of.
All I have to say is timing,
Yeah, perfect. Yeah, yet's the big word, so Nicole, I'll turn it over to you.
I think.
1 second.
Yeah.
I'm glad that it's
Hello.
been a while.
Good to see you.
Oh, I see it on there. Okay, I see it on that computer. Thank you, Nick, for figuring out the tech.
Yeah, one step.
And while we're waiting for that board, more information about the roof is in your.
I saw it.
is-
Yeah, I
is-
saw
yeah.
that.
I didn't even see my list, so.
Okay. Disposition for learning. Thank you, Nick. If you click with my voice, I'll try to. Okay, so monitoring report. So this report is about a framework for measuring student readiness to adapt, to think independently, to reason with evidence, to collaborate, and to grow as lifelong learners. On some level in my head, I want you to know, I sort of call this the executive functioning report. It's not exactly aligned with the definition of executive functioning, but it has a lot of connection points. So, breaking it down into 6 categories. Disposition for learning for lifelong learning is currently defined as students being able to understanding and have the skills for inquiry and creativity, for adaptation to the context, right, depending on who your audience is and what the task is, for evidence-based reasoning, for taking perspective, for reasoned problem solving, and for collaboration and leadership. I think earlier, the person from the labor department was talking about the quote unquote soft skills. This is also, I think, a connection point with that. Okay.
And to be clear, the things that you just showed on the screen are the words of the ends policy.
got it.
That this board first defined 10 years ago and is up for discussion now.
Yes. So the superintendent's interpretation that I'm sharing with you is that we would be in compliance with meeting those ends when we can essentially do 5 things. We can show that students routinely demonstrate these things, so we have evidence that they're doing it. When they can adapt their communication, when they can use evidence, and when we can show growth over time through multiple measures. That's sort of the biggest piece in terms of the accountability part of this. And then when the gaps are identified, right, so when we're looking at the data over time, that we implement something to attend to the areas that are not growing or not taking root with kids. This is your compliance rubric in different colors, beginning, approaching, proficient, and advanced. I don't think there's anything new about the rubric. And I put it there because I want to say once again, with the no shame, no blame, we're at beginning compliance because I was unable to find anything that had multiple measures where I could accurately say where we are with monitoring lifelong learning. If you go to the next one, I'll show you what I did find. What I was able to find, and the Gertrude Chamberlain, Principal Holly, helped me find this, is that currently on our report cards, K-5, those of you who have K-5 children or have recently been through K-5 know that at the top of the report card, responsible, reflective, cooperative, attentive, accountable, and resourceful are measured for each individual child by their classroom teacher in all 3 schools. And the charts that I provided for you are out of EduClimber showing how kids were doing in the most recent iteration of the report card. And I'm not showing you necessarily to say, let's talk about the data, but instead to say that this was at one point, and Holly could tell me the year, I can't remember. This was a response to this policy that individual teachers would be rating kids based on these. Consistently, satisfactorily, unsatisfactorily, and one other. So there is evidence that there was an approach that it's still being implemented. And as you can see, it's not in all of our schools, it's not multimodal. And it's by individual teachers. I'm not clear when I looked into it, if there's even an alignment amongst teachers about what the things mean and what you're looking for.
So this is a good example of hard to measure.
Yes. Well, yes. Yeah,
Hard
I
to
don't know
apply it.
where-
I'm gonna recommend a way to measure it. That's why I was sort of like, yeah. It is hard to measure and that is why, my recommendation to Dr. Clark is that, we measure it in multiple ways so that we can have, many different measures informing progress. So if you go to the next slide. These, I did a lot of reading, a lot of listening, and I brought these to Joe as my recommendations. I also brought them to Kathy DeNatalie and Todd McKinley, who are the curriculum coordinators for feedback. That if the district were to, direct leadership to focus on instructional rounds, which, are, when you think about, for those of you who watch TV, shows about doctors do medical rounds, the focus isn't on, is the teacher doing a good job? Is the doctor doing a good job? Instead, it's what's the presentation? What's happening in the classroom? How are students doing? What do we see that their instruction looks like? And it's a group of people who are not just administrators. So it's teachers, administrators, sometimes stakeholders, community members coming in and all looking together and then having conversation about what they're seeing, not in the teacher's performance. That's not the goal. The goal is instead, what does learning look like? How are students, right? What are they showing? What do we see? So that's one. The second is to increase student and family voice, to have leadership bring in regular feedback from students and families about what's happening in school, and to at a minimum do it twice a year in every school. The third, which is right now, I think the strongest one in the district, in fact, I think almost every school does it in some iteration, is looking at data, right? Where are the gaps, what's going on? And to some degree, the state mandates we do it. It's also best practice, and so a lot of our schools do it. So you would have what's going on in the classroom for students. What are students and families saying about what's going on? What is the data showing us? And then lastly, and I think I've heard you all talk about this, but that is auditing what's going on with the curriculum and with the tests that we're asking students to complete to figure out what are we doing, how are staff doing implementing it, and what do we need to support our curriculum with to strengthen it for disposition for lifelong learning. So these are 4 practices that I guess here right now I'm recommending to Dr. Clark that we bring forward to administrators, where they can then say, what does this mean? Is this going to do the thing? How do we want to do it? What would it look like? And really begin to flesh it out as a part of our instructional improvement.
And it feels like these are things that would apply to more than just like, 1.1. Like some of these methods are pretty applicable broadly, so you might kill multiple birds with one stone.
Yes. Yep.
I had a very similar thought that these are really transferable, given the state of our discussion, to possibly new ends, right? These are really, and I very much appreciate the multiple measures kind of profile approach. Given that there isn't, if you don't measure these things like you measure how much math a student.
So I have a question. Would this happen to get to the topic of leadership review, sample tasks across grade levels? Audit checks if rigor is consistent, staff experience levels, and whether accommodations maintain cognitive demand. I get that. But I'm wondering also like the output for like testing. Because some of the feedback that I've heard at like student council meetings that we've sat in on is we're seeing, different teachers, there's grading that's different, and will that help to drive some of that? Okay, that's where that would come from.
Yeah.
Okay.
These are, like in their essence, what you all are noticing is these are very high leverage practices, right? Like in a complex system where there's many things happening at once, even within one classroom, these get to many of all those different things and are not just gonna impact disposition
Right.
for learning. It's gonna, right, it's gonna raise where there's red flags about X, Y, or Z. It's gonna help us see that, where there's places where there's green flags, where we are doing a really good job, which is happening in so many places. How do we strengthen that, right? It's really easy for us to get focused on what are our problems and how do we fix them? But most of the research says, look at what you're doing well, how it's working, and make more of it happen. And that's what this will surface.
And then also, I think complementing that with the student and family voice as well is important. Now, how is that going to be different than what we see from Lynn Panorama? Like, how would that?
That's a great question. Panorama, as we implement it now, and there's lots of ways to implement it, is students, anonymously fill out the survey. And then we have another set of measures for staff to fill it out, and then I believe we have a family one. Which is all software related. This, I think we could find a way, the part about it that I have to tell you I have a bias towards is the family focus groups, so bringing people together. I think that could be different. Could we use Panorama for some of this? Yes. But I don't think we want to limit ourselves to Panorama.
And the questions we're asking in this are different than the questions that we're asking in Panorama.
Right.
Panorama
Yes.
a lot, like belonging and those sorts of
Yeah,
things, where
right.
this is your your preparation for learning.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, I guess what I was thinking is, would it be rolled out in a similar platform like Panorama? Is that kind of the vision? Like, how would that be? You know, perception survey, when I'm thinking of surveys, like, how are you getting a good distribution? Right, and adequate representation of people in that?
I think that's a good question to bring, that we're planning to bring to administrators.
Okay.
Because I think, I mean, you all know this, that what makes something strong in a school district is when the people who are implementing help build it. And so if Dr. Clark says, these are the things we're focused on, then it'll be our work to say, so how do we want to do this?
Okay.
Which I imagine we would then share with you.
Yeah, I mean, so when we say there's a lot of work to do, there's a lot of work to do.
Oh, yeah,
This
this
is a lot of this work to do, and that's why I know we've been coming a lot with beginning compliance, approaching compliance. It's because we have to do this work to get us to the next one. It's exciting and there's a lot of it, but we're gonna get there.
Yes, we are. I think there's one more slide. So this again is a proposed report schedule. So as we built this out and talked about it, the idea of finding ways to spread this throughout the year so that accountability measures are spread out. And so the idea of having walkthroughs on a monthly basis, the research suggests that that's the right cadence for it. Quarterly, right? So that on a quote, we would look at the data. We're doing it right now 3 times. We have set times because of our universal screeners. So we can shift that up twice yearly for parents, and then to have everything completed to report to the board. I also built it in so that there would be a mid-year report to the superintendent and an end-of-year report to the superintendent. Because I think it's easy in schools because so many things happen, as I know you know. To lose sight of something if you don't have to report about it until the end of the year. I think that concludes my report to the board. The next step from here, if Joe says, yes, move forward with this, would be, we have 4 or 5 days of administrative PD development this summer. That we would bring this forward to principals to talk about if this is the framework, how do we want to implement it? Do we want to implement it all at once? Do we want to break it down in sections? And to make a plan for the next 3 years.
Yeah, and to give the spoiler, yes, I'm in favor of it, and I also think that we definitely, like Nicole said, to make this work, we have to have everybody work together on it. So we are coming up with these lofty ideas, and principals will help us focus those and tell us exactly what we're going to be doing. But there needs to be, in my opinion, some consistent fundamental things that we do that will next May, we'll begin this report and be able to show you that we have actual measures that we can tell you how to do. Right.
Can I share my screen for just 1 second?
Yeah.
Would it be advantageous to sync up that timeline for rollout with the work that we're doing.
So that's, isn't that interesting? Because if the ends policy changes, then this changes, right?
Well, that's why, and
Although-
that sounds like a pretty heavy lift.
Yeah. I don't imagine, again, you'll do the ends policies. I imagine that there will still be some sort of academic focus in our ends policies. And this is good work to do because it will help us, be stronger academically when we're doing these things,
That's,
even what the ends policy is, right?
Yeah, and I just wanted to tie it back for the board. For everybody, this is the document that we're editing over the next few months, and the thing that we just talked about, it's 6 little bullet points. But they really cover a lot, and it's an important thing to read them.
And I guess, I'm not sure if I was clear about this, with a plan like this, you know, for instance, if you just, like, the data would be a medium lift, but instructional rounds would be a huge lift, because it's a change in practice. So that might be that we just spend the next year learning how to do instructional rounds, whereas we can definitely bring all the data together and we could have more parent and student feedback. So I don't know that it's all gonna go forward at the same speed, just to be very clear.
Great.
Yeah.
Is there any other board comment or question on 1.1? Then I would entertain a motion to monitor. I would entertain a motion to monitor report 1.1 disposition for learning according to the monitoring rubric and provided in the board materials.
Motion.
Dan motions,
I'll second.
Laura seconds, any discussion?
Ask a question.
Please, always.
Yeah. So the rest of them, I felt like I've understood the report great. This one, I have a question. I feel like the interpretation is really good and everything, and I would rate that really high. But since Nicole couldn't find that much data, does that impact, like, would that make me rank lower on the compliance? If that's not available, do you know what I mean?
that's a great question. And the way I think about it is, does the report allow you? Does it give you enough information to make a rating? And technically, even the absence of that information gives you enough information to make the rating, right? And they've also provided an indication, Nicole has indicated that she feels that our district is at beginning compliance here, because we're really just starting to steer the ship in that direction where it hasn't been before. There was nothing really to build on.
Gotcha. Okay. Thank you.
Great. So again, there's a monitoring report section and a district outcome, so I'm gonna go around the room. This time I'm gonna start with you, Dan. You're gonna give me a 0 to 4.
1.
Okay, so monitor report, Dan, 1. Michelle,
Great.
Alyssa. Laura.
Great.
I'm a 2. Jen,
I would say I am a 2 also. 3.
I'm with 3.
Okay.
3.
I'll go 3.
Okay, so Ally is a 3 and Moment is a 3. Okay, and then the next section is the actual district outcomes. And so I'm gonna start with you again, Dan.
1.
Okay, Michelle, Alyssa, so it was Michelle 1, Alyssa 1, Laura.
Oh, I'm sorry, could you do what you said? Okay, 2,
I'm a 2. So Laura 2, Seamus 2,
I'm
Jen,
1.
1, Jen,
2. 1.
Emily 2. Ally is 1. Moment, 2. Okay, and the compliance plan, I believe that would be the walkthroughs, the data driven, all that stuff. Compliance plan acceptable, yeah,
So, what the plan is to fix the,
Yes.
to,
It's a yes or no.
oh, sorry, yes. Sorry,
Dan, yes, Michelle,
Yes.
Alyssa,
Yes.
Laura,
Yes.
Seamus, yes. Jen,
Yes.
Emily,
Yeah.
Ally,
Yes.
Moment, yes. Okay, all right, thank you very much. We'll move on to monitor report 1.3. Which is personal development.
Yep, and that was me, and it would typically be Monica, but she's gone. Now, so let me share with you what I'm doing. Okay, so I took Jen's advice from our last time we did this, last time I was here, that it was done, and I put together, and I used your 4 slides. Jen, so the first slide is, what is policy governance and why does it exist? I'm not gonna read the whole thing, but just a reminder to everybody, this is why we're doing what we're doing. And this is these are our policies and our executive limitations, and the one we are working on today is personal development. So, and I did the one, this is what you're gonna see in my report. What you're gonna see is that our key takeaways is we also are beginning compliance here. We need to set some baseline measures for this policy. Again, it's the first time these items in policy 1.0 have been addressed individually, and it's the first time this policy has been monitored since January 19th, 2022. At that time, the data that was presented for this was the things that you have talked to me about that you don't want, a giant list of all the different stuff that we're doing. So what we need to do, similar to the report that Nicole just gave, is we need to decide what our measures are going to be for each component, develop a timeline, and where principals would submit a report to me to give to the board. So that is why I believe we are beginning compliance. Our big gap overall is we haven't been monitored for 4 years. We do have some practices in place. Some of these things we're going to do naturally, but it's not in any kind of deliberative or intentional way. So our path to improvement, determine the measures, develop a timeline, and submit the data to me. So I'm gonna stop sharing that one. I'm gonna start sharing my other. Let's see. I'm gonna get better. Yeah. Hey, all right, good, good. There. Okay, so the, in policy 1.3, the policy being monitored, that is verbatim from what our ends policy is. What students will use self-awareness and interpersonal skills to effectively enhance their own performance and collaborate with others by developing an awareness of their individual learning styles, interests, and passions, clarifying goals, aspirations, and post-secondary plans, building capacity to make informed and healthy decisions, living responsibly with confidence, resilience, and adaptability, demonstrating effective time management and organizational skills, building supportive relationships, and respectfully advocating for self and others. Again, I think we're doing a lot of this stuff, but very few, probably other than number 2, are we doing in any like meaningful, purposeful way. So
Can I ask just for a second?
Sure.
Emily, when you look at this, is this what you're talking about? When you're saying like, it's too much, like, is this like too high of a goal? Or is it improperly phrased, or Or maybe not.
I love all of these things. I think they're amazing, but I feel like, yeah, it's hard to pin down exactly high level. And that's how I feel like it's hard to pin down exactly what we're trying to want these kids to do, or like. I guess that's what I'm saying.
And hard to measure.
Yeah,
Hard to
and
measure.
they're hard to measure, yeah,
Hey, second grader, do you know your learning style?
right, or. Yeah,
There's stuff to measure. But it's our current policy, so we're gonna find a way to do it.
yeah, but living responsibly with confidence, resilience, and adaptability. But that's just
Yeah.
like.
Look at the
Well, and
lost
it means-
and found table.
It means different things to different people, like, you know, the idea of lifelong learning.
Yeah,
Learn how to change a tire, right? And I can, it's so variable.
Exactly, but I do love them, so I.
Yeah,
wanna-
That's the thing is
they want our
there,
kids to have.
you can't look at them and say, oh, that's bad, right? It's not bad, it's just.
Okay, so then you'll see my component definitions and what it looks like to be successful. But I think more importantly is what we get down to. Again, the outcome is that we have not really done anything since 2022. So let me talk about. Well, if we can look at the rubric, there are a couple things we're doing, like self-awareness beginning. The goals and aspirations of post-secondary planning, I would say, approaching, that might even be, I would say it's proficient at the high school. And we actually had a great communication with Patrick today about the goals for seniors as they graduate. That data I thought was fantastic that they prepare. So they do some stuff like that. It's just not it's not at all places. Informed healthy decision-making, limited or beginning, evidence of coping and perseverance. Limited. Continuous improvement response, actions taken, but we do have a response to continuous improvement and we can get better at that. Okay, so when we look at, what I really want to get to is what's our executive summary? What are we going to do to get better here? So first of all, we need to come up with and I'm reading from the second paragraph here. We need to establish a small set of common measures aligned to each component of the policy. Using two types of evidence for each. I want to have two measures for each of those 6 or 7 items that are there. Student evidence and system indicators, like are kids participating? Are they completing things? Are they engaged? What are some other quantitative measures in addition to what are the students building with their performance or different artifacts that they provide? And again, this is yet to be built, right? This is like Nicole said, this is big picture. We'll take it to our administrators and say, okay, how are we going to do this? But I do see an annual cycle, including a fall baseline collection, a mid-year review, and then a spring collection to see how have we done? Have we made progress over the years? Principals would then submit an annual report to me, talking about all of these things that we're measuring, how the kids are doing. There's always, of course, going to be an equity review in these to see if there's any gaps between different subgroups. And I'll compile these reports for the monitoring report. Hopefully what this will allow the board to do is see that we are making consistent gains in student personal development, that we're understanding what our trends are, and we're evaluating our progress using the rubric. It creates an accountable structure for us. And of course, we'll continue to work on things that show us that we're not hitting there. Again, I know that that is all incredibly nebulous because it is incredibly nebulous. At this point, what I could say is, it hasn't been measured in 4 years. We haven't done anything with it this year. But as long as this continues to be an end, next year, there will be all of it. It'll start over the summer on those 5 days. Are there any board questions or comments?
Just really excited about you guys kind of craft these and just to make them something that students could actually achieve and understand how they've achieved it and we can understand what they can achieve. And like they're probably doing it all day long. And many students are doing these things, but we're not capturing them.
For this one particular, I just think it's more complex than it needs to be. When we could find a simple way to measure these things, that would be so much better than what we're doing now, which is just throwing stuff at the wall.
I also think that it really gives us a sense as a board. Like imagine if these were your goals, you know? Could I share the screen? Could I grab the screen again? I'm just gonna bring up this document, what we're talking about is 1.3 personal development, right? Imagine if this was what your boss told you you had to accomplish, you know? And obviously, like, there is a whole very highly educated and competent and experienced administration team behind our schools, so you can assign them difficult goals. But when the goals are so officious and, you know, we can see the pain of trying to like accomplish these things. And I
Yeah,
think
how
it's-
confident, resilient, and adaptable are the people that report to you or are your customers? Yeah,
Right.
that's a tough challenge.
But I also appreciate that you're saying, if we don't change these, you will
We're gonna
measure.
do it. Yep, that's my job is to do what that policy are, so.
I think it's also interesting, I don't know if you're gonna bring up that survey that we took before coming here today.
I need to go back and take. that
Okay,
further.
well, I just looking at the policies and me realizing that my least favorite one is the academic one. In terms of just like the future and what I think the kids need from the school. Of course, they need all the academics, but the soft skills that Kendall was talking about and. Those are like so meaty to me and so like important to kind of put some real focus on, because it's always been academic, but. That's not the whole picture, so.
Anything else?
No, short and sweet and beginning compliant.
Okay.
Thanks, Joe.
Joe.
I would entertain a motion to monitor 1.3 personal development. Using the rubric provided in the board pack materials.
I move.
Laura moves,
Second.
Jen seconds, any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. The motion passes, so now we'll do the monitoring. This time we'll start with Moment again. So first we're asking about the monitoring report itself. How, like Michelle was saying, to what extent does it allow you to make a judgment on?
Or actual outcomes.
Yeah. So, Moment,
1.
Ally. Emily,
Here,
Jen,
I would say 1,
I'm a 2, Laura,
2,
Alyssa,
2,
Michelle,
2.
Dan,
Two.
Let me ask you a question. I mean, I'm glad that we're all going through and doing this, but Joe, in yours, did you not provide what you think it is? Did you not provide, you had indicated that you were a 1, right?
I think we're beginning compliance.
I think that's more in the outcomes,
second.
Yeah, on the outcome.
which is the next thing,
Okay.
which is
All right.
important. There's no dumb questions when it comes to policy governance,
Right.
because
I think my report is genius. I think we are. I think I did a good job writing that we're not successful.
the board, does anybody want to change their vote based on that discussion? Totally
So
fine.
so I think that what you wrote, I would say is a 2. But the outcome there, I would say is a 1.
So were you a 1 previously?
I was a 1 to know.
Right, so I'm just gonna move
Yeah,
your vote
sorry.
to the 2.
Okay.
Great, okay, so the next one is actually on the outcomes, and we'll start with Moment again.
1.
Okay. Ally,
1.
1.
Emily, 1. Jen,
I'm 1.
I'm a 2. Laura,
So 1.
Alyssa,
1.
Michelle,
1.
Dan. Okay, and then is the compliance plan acceptable? Moment.
Yeah.
Ally,
Yes.
Emily,
Yes.
Jen,
Yes.
I'm a yes. Laura,
Yes.
Alyssa,
Yes.
Michelle, Dan,
Yes.
all right. That, yeah, go
Say
ahead.
one thing real quick, if you can you share your screen again, because I would like to show folks when we're talking about measuring and accountability and some of the transparency, I don't know if the audience has seen or the community has seen before on the website, when we monitor the policies, we're actually putting up there all of this information and the numbers. Do you know what I'm talking about? On the school board website. Can you just?
It's not totally up to date.
No, I know, but just, that's okay. Realize it's not totally up to date, but it will be. But I just want to show people, you know, as we're going through and we're looking at these monitoring reports, it's nice that you have this kind of value now, so you can quantitatively see how things are changing. Just very quickly.
So the standard school board website,
Yep, and then you scroll down, and there it is. See,
And
there's
this
the
is,
scorecard.
this is where I was asking for a little bit of help to just calculate the average and then put it into these and then just.
Yep. But then what we want to do is put in here links to the actual monitoring report. You can click on it, you can see when we reviewed it. You can see what that score is, and I think we need a legend somewhere in there to say what that interpretation means and what the compliance means. Well, but it's in the
Maybe-
process of being
Maybe
updated.
include a link
Yes.
to the actual rubric.
Yeah,
Yeah,
the rubric.
that's the most explanatory.
People know what it means. But then you can see like, all right, if there's a gap, then what's the plan to get it to, you know, to proficient or advanced compliance? Right.
Great,
Can I just make a quick comment on that? I'll be allowed.
we can't do it right now.
Okay,
Sorry.
thank you.
Okay, so, at this point, I'm gonna suggest that we take a 1 minute break just to walk around.
But one, I need one.
Wait, 5 minutes, 2 minute break.
3 minutes.
We'll be back here at 8:22.
Okay.
probably
I think.
get started. We're on the home stretch. We've got two more agenda items. The first one is superintendent report. So I will turn it over to Joe.
Okay. I am going to, give you a report that Seamus had asked me to look into, and I was happy to do that. And it's about, what I titled Student Expression, Staff Responsibilities, and Legal Neutrality in Public Schools. And so, oh, I'm sorry. I need to move this thing, change this up. Our responsibility as a public district clearly is supporting student learning, and we need to constantly remind ourselves that we have to treat students fairly, regardless of their beliefs, their identities, their points of view. Every student that comes to school has the right to a quality education, regardless of whether we agree or disagree with where they stand on a variety of issues. Why does this matter? Because we are a school district that serves students and families with many different beliefs, backgrounds, identities, and life experiences. Now, our goal is not to avoid disagreeing with other folks, but our goal is to make sure that any disagreement is handled in ways that are lawful and respectful and developmentally appropriate. So our core principle when we talk about this is students do not need to agree with one another, their teachers, or the school district in order to be respected. And at the same time, student expression does not protect people from harassing or threatening or intimidating or bullying other folks. So there's sometimes that's a fine line that we need to monitor. What's the legal framework for this? Well, the First Amendment, right? The First Amendment applies to public schools. Students, particularly, the Supreme Court said, do not lose First Amendment rights when they walk into the schoolhouse doors. Students retain free expression rights at school. But those rights exist within the school's responsibility to maintain safety, order, and an appropriate learning environment. So therefore, kids can't say anything they want if it's going to cause a safety risk. You can't yell fire, right, in a crowded theater. And schools can respond when that speech materially disrupts with school operations. That's been held to be a very high standard. What materially disrupts school operations is more than just, it's making a few kids mad that you have that shirt on, right? It needs to be something that substantially disrupts what's going on in the school. These are the important cases that when you're an education administrator, school administrator, you learn about these in your law classes. Tinker Des Moines, that's the shirt case where students have a constitutional right to school. Hazelwood Kuhlmeyer, schools have more authority over school-sponsored speech when the decisions are tied to legitimate educational reasons. And the Mahanoy Area School District versus BL. Schools have some authority regarding off-campus speech, but it's really, really limited. So in general, for the most part, kids can say almost anything they want outside of school, even on social media, as long as they're not using school equipment, or if it's not causing substantial disruption in school. There's a famous case about some cheerleaders who were just ripping a teacher. And the courts found that that was not substantially disrupting school. And when the school wanted to discipline them, they were told they could not. There are also federal civil rights laws that impact this sort of thing. Title VI, of course, protects against discrimination based on race. Title IX is a sex-based discrimination law, and Section 504 protects students with disabilities from discrimination. So now it gets to the point where I think is really, I think what Seamus was hoping we would get to. Student clubs and equal access. If a public secondary school allows non-curricular student groups, access must be handled consistently. We can't treat student groups differently simply because adults agree or disagree with the religious, political, philosophical, or other content of the student's speech. Therefore, to be extreme, if you have a Fellowship of Christian Athletes group and a Satanist group wanted to form, we would have to allow them. We cannot discriminate based on what the beliefs of the people are. Vermont law also has a few things that are unique here. There's a lot of protection for student journalists in school. Of course, they still can't libel or violate privacy or those sorts of things, but other than that, Vermont student journalists, if you're in the yearbook or if you're on the school paper, you have a lot of flexibility to publish what you want. And the Vermont law also protects school library materials from being removed simply because of partisan disagreement, right? So if you have somebody, you hear somebody in the community that I don't like that book, it's inappropriate, there's too much sexual content, there's too much violence, that you can't remove it simply because it is objected to by somebody for those sorts of things. Harassment, hazing, and bullying, of course, this is a Vermont law also that we need to make sure that our kids are not being harassed, hazed, or bullied. We need to protect student expression while also responding appropriately to harassment, hazing, bullying, discrimination. So if we take it, really down home, right, to something we saw this year, if there's like an ICE event that goes on and there are students who are concerned about ICE thinking they're overreaching, and there are students who are thinking that ICE is doing exactly what they should be doing. You can't discriminate based on either of those things, nor as an educator should you support or can you support one or another, unless it gets to harassment, hazing, bullying, discrimination. And treating people neutrally does not mean that you ignore any harm that might be done. Vermont educator ethics, they require educators to treat students with dignity and respect. Educators are expected under Vermont educator ethics law to understand students' needs, values, beliefs, and cultural backgrounds, and also maintain professional boundaries, communicate respectfully, and act in the best interest of students. So what does that mean for our educators? Educators absolutely have the right to have personal beliefs and they have constitutional rights as private citizens. But when educators are acting in their professional role, educators have a responsibility to maintain the trust of all students and families, which means they should not use their position to pressure students towards a personal, political, religious, or ideological belief. Again, students have more of those First Amendment rights in a school than a staff member does. Why? Because we are employees of the state. Professional neutrality does not mean avoiding difficult or controversial topics. It doesn't mean we can't talk about this stuff. It means that presenting instruction in a way that is educationally grounded, age appropriate, respectful of differing perspectives, and consistent with district expectations. So educators absolutely can guide discussions about these things. They can ask students to support, if a student says something that is apparently objectionable, they can ask to support your claim with evidence. They can correct factual errors. They can address harmful conduct while still avoiding personal advocacy. Again, I'm not saying that's easy to do because we're all, passionate about beliefs we have, but that's what's expected of educators. So what does this mean in practice? In classrooms, staff may teach complex and controversial topics when it's tied to the curriculum and the learning standards, right? So if you're going to be talking about, again, like maybe the ICE issues, that's probably not related to math class. It might be more appropriate in a social studies class. In discussions, staff may require evidence. They can redirect disrespectful comments. They can correct misinformation and maintain a productive learning environment. But in discipline, we should focus on the conduct, the disruption, the harassment, the threats, not merely whether a student's lawful opinion is popular or unpopular. So how do we address this? Well, we do not have a board policy on this exact topic. We do not have one standalone board policy. However, we do address these responsibilities through several systems. First of all, we have the Student Code of Conduct, which talks about the things that students are allowed to do and say. We have harassment, hazing, and bullying procedures, which applies to all stakeholders here, not just students, but also staff. We have to comply with civil rights laws. We do curriculum review and supervision to make sure that what we are teaching to students does not have a that is not pushing a political view. It could be factual, but it can't persuade. There are procedures for student clubs. There are procedures for student media. We have procedures for library materials. In fact, I think the board adopted an updated policy on that earlier this year. There are educator ethics and professional expectations, and the administrator consultation with central office and legal counsel. When it gets really to a tough question that we don't know the answer to, and this stuff changes all the time, right? That's one of the most exciting things about being a school administrator is there's always something new. If you told me, 3 years ago that 6-7 would cause people to get freak out so much, right? That day when I started teaching, it was pagers. Kids had pagers and it was gum. And it's just amazing how every year there's something that causes people anxiety. So when that comes up, when you have to talk to legal counsel, we absolutely take advantage of that. What's our commitment to students? We're going to be fair. We're going to be lawful. We're going to be consistent. Students should not feel they have to hold a particular belief to be respected by adults in school. We need to respect all students, no matter what they believe. Even if they wear a t-shirt that goes against our political beliefs, our religious beliefs, our philosophical beliefs, we must treat that student respectfully. Students also need to understand that their expression comes with some responsibilities also. They can express their beliefs, but they cannot affect the rights, safety, dignity, or learning environment of others. And our role as a school is to teach them, guide them, protect them, and respond with fairness. Is that what you were looking for?
Yeah, and my question on that is with regard to breeding different, that careful, difficult, and like you said, difficult handling of complex topics. Do teachers receive periodic training on how to deal with stuff like the ICE raid?
I said, teachers, all staff, we have a variety of trainings and some of it is tangentially related, when we remind them about the hazing, harassment, and bullying policy. I would say that when it comes to things like the ICE raid, that we were not prepared for that to happen, and we're not proactive in telling people, hey, this is not the first time. The second time we were, when we said, okay, this is what you're permitted to do and not permitted to do. So some of it is honestly, it's time-based and it's contextual. I don't know of the training that our staff does. I don't know the catalog well enough to know if they get any of that there.
I can just say, I've been teaching for 30 years. There have been one incident after another. I don't know where this request is coming from and what the purpose of it is. It seems to be focused on like teachers not doing their jobs. That's kind of how I'm interpreting this. And we are trained. That's when you are trained as a teacher, that is part of the training. No, I mean, yeah, no, you are encouraging children to think and think critically and come to their own conclusions and give them facts. That is the job, and we all know that. And I'm getting a little tense about this because it sounds like you don't think that's what teachers are doing. That's kind of what I, that's, well, that Seamus asked for this, that's what I'm hearing, because the job is to grow people's minds. It is a public service, and we are to give children facts and have them come to their own conclusions. I cannot believe I'm sitting here and having this being questioned, that this is my profession. So no, that is not what we do. That is not the job.
I want to state unequivocally, I believe that the vast majority of our teachers do this incredibly well every day in very difficult situations. So my intention was not at all to be offensive to you as a teacher. I myself was a teacher, and I know how hard it is, so I apologize.
No, it's not that, because I don't know why the question was asked. I mean, there has to be a reason why you asked your question, and this is where I'm like, okay. I just can't sit here and listen to it anymore. It's just, it's not, anyway, fine, I said it, so.
Is there any board comment before I respond? Let's give people an opportunity to say something before I say something.
I appreciate having all the information in one place. That's good thought. So. Yeah, we kind of distilled a lot of material and just presented it, so. I'm thankful for that.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't. It's hard to get the emotion of what it actually takes to do this.
Right.
Every day, and when unexpected events occur and emotions are high and yeah, I think it would be very challenging for me to not get to be in that kind of a place where someone might be wearing a shirt that goes against everything I believe, and I still have to not get emotional about it. But I do think it's interesting talk about, First Amendment, and you mentioned people can say what they want, kids can say what they want, but it's also, that's not exactly the end of the First Amendment, like there are also consequences that occur with your words. So like, that's the important part, I think, for kids to understand, like, yes, you have the freedom of speech, you can say anything you want, but that doesn't mean that people who you say it to will say, well, okay, there, that's fine, that has no effect on anything, that doesn't make a difference, and I think that's an important lesson that teachers are teaching kids every day, and then this is incredibly hard topic, so.
Yeah. Is there any other board comment? Could I share my screen for just, oh, yeah, looks like I can. Just to respond to Laura's question about why I brought this up in the first place. So here's an example of a, pretty good reputation research, think tank, the Pew Research Center, and they do a lot of, research on how the public perceives K-12 public schools. And I think one of the most concerning pieces of evidence that I've seen is that support or having a positive view about public schools has a strong partisan divide, and it has dropped by almost 10 percentage points among Republicans in the last 10 years. So I think that there is a perception problem that a good portion of the public holds, and it's important when there's a matter of trust. When people don't trust public schools, many people trust public schools, but for the people who don't trust public schools, it's valuable for us to talk openly about what ethical commitments we have, what training we have. And so that's why I wanted Joe to talk about that.
That's interesting, because I would say that part of that could be due to ideas that are being put out in the political environment about what schools are like that might not be accurate.
Right.
And so having this conversation allows that information to be put out into the world as well.
Yes, we should talk about it because there's misperceptions about it.
And I do think, some of these conversations might be tough, but I do think it's important to put that out there because you've got a diverse group in our community. And you're trying to reach and represent all of these diverse thoughts, and this is big stuff, right? So I appreciate it. Thank you, Joe, for putting it together.
Yes. All right, I think we're on our last agenda item, which is the remnant of the consent agenda as regards the bid for the roof project. I would entertain a motion to approve the bid for the roof project as presented belatedly in the board materials. Jen moves.
Second.
Dan seconds. Is there any discussion? So if there's any discussion based on what we've seen.
I just have one question. Is there any kind of guarantee, warranty on what is?
Yes, I think it's at least a year, but I don't know that off the top of my head. It's included in, the RFP and in their price that they.
Was it the same warranty guarantee for both companies?
Come on, man.
Can we get that in the board update?
I couldn't figure you that one.
Okay,
Likely, the companies that, they're all very reputable and they always come, but like, we haven't had issues with any, not honoring their.
Honoring their work.
Honoring of Jesus, which is really why I'm a big proponent of working with local, at least the state of Vermont vendors, because long ago, they did do some work with out-of-state vendors that they did have troubles with, stuff like that.
All right, all those in favor? Say aye. Aye, okay, the motion passes. So the next item on the agenda is set agenda for the June 3rd meeting. I believe I have a June 3rd. Expected agenda. Okay, so I don't have a draft of it yet. The one thing that will certainly be on it is the final, okay, so one thing that'll be on it is the last community forum before the committee presents its suggestions for edits to the ends policy. So that'll be the last chance before we do our first draft. There will also be a second reading of wellness, the wellness policy, which we first talked about at the last meeting. Are there any other, and I'm sure there's gonna be other things that are generated by the superintendent.
Yeah, continuous improvements.
Continuous improvement plan.
On Daisy's monitoring reports.
2.2 treatment of staff. Is there any are there any issues the board wants to see definitely on June 4th, besides just what we've talked about?
Definitely making sure that we have a time to welcome the news.
Yeah. Okay.
Is it
It's
the
June
3rd?
3rd. I apologize. It's June 3rd.
and your student reps always bring donuts for.
My last meeting will be June 17th, so 2 more days.
All right. I would entertain a motion to adjourn. Alyssa moves,
A second.
Emily seconds. Any discussion? All those in favor?
I.
All right, we're.